I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to Leadovation. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. This podcast is dedicated to the art and science of innovative leadership. Through insightful interviews with industry experts, I bring you cutting-edge strategies and experiences of innovative leadership, helping you think differently, act strategically, and achieve remarkable results. Join me as I provide insights and tools that empower you to make smarter decisions, forge meaningful relationships. Welcome to Leadovation. In this episode, we challenge the whole idea of human resources. My guest, Rasmus Holst, CEO of Zensai, explains why the future is human success and how to actually measure it through performance, learning, and engagement, not just annual surveys and attrition reports. We dig into his human success score, how, for example, 14,000 kudos a year reshaped one company's culture, and what AI means for building high-performing teams. Most importantly, Rasmus shares simple moves any leader can make this week to start redefining HR and measuring what really matters. So Rasmus, the lovable one, I heard your name as being the actual name. It's great to meet you, my friend, all the way over on the other side of the world. Thank you for getting together at 6 o'clock your time, PM. I wanted to start off with a question about teams, because I think that seems to be a topic that most people can get their arms around. We're all trying to, in organizations, get better at, leveraging the motivation, the performance, the attitudes of other people in order to create high-performing teams. If you, read stuff on John Katzenbach's work on teaming, he's got a whole thing on structure. But I don't know whether people really, first of all, know how to do team building other than let's go out and do some paintball. What is your, first of all, how do you build a high-performing team? And then in particular, in the age of AI, because now we have a new team member called ChatGPT or some other type of technology that might be helping us. They're almost like another seat at the table. So speak to teamwork and also in the age of AI, if you could.
Wow, that's
how's that for an opening question? We could take 4 podcasts on that.
How to open a Michelin star restaurant.
Exactly. Yeah. How to do that, right.
You start with the basics. And I think even that would actually correlate. Now, I didn't think about the Michelin star restaurant analogy, but I do think you start with the basics. And I think every high performance team starts with kind of coming together around where we want to go, whether that's a mission of creating high quality food, whether that's creating the best software, all of those types of things. And for a long time, I think we spend a lot of time talking about money. And I think over 25 years, there is a bit of gray hair here and all of that, even though it should be lovable. I think that I've realized that how much we talk about money and how few people in an organization actually gets really proud about that. And how many people get proud of the product you deliver, of the services you deliver, and all of that. And if you, as an executive, you're not able to articulate that, you will be left behind. And if you see that in different light, if you see that in light of the sports team, they all kind of have they obviously want to win, but they also have an identity. Some are the hard playing ones, some are the cool, tricksy ones that could use things. And I think this identity is a starting point. And I think on top of that,
so if you could just for a second, I think you just said something that's very important, and I apologize for the very broad question because it's way too big. But going back to identity, you started talking about, rank and file employees may not be necessarily identified or have great pride in making money, but certainly of those who are higher up in the organization might, because in some ways their compensation might be in fact account for that, right? So, what are we going to get as a result of that? It's a very different value proposition. But how does a team create an identity, especially when most meetings these days, whereby the team gets to interact, team members get to
Right.
interact, is taking place on things like what we have now, this virtual environment. I just am overall just continuing to be blown away, even after COVID. The amount of meetings that people have when
Yeah.
they could be meeting face to face are still being done over Zoom, WebEx, or Teams. And so then this idea about identity that you just pulled out being such an
Yeah.
important building block of creating a high performance team. How do you create an identity in a virtual environment?
Here's an interesting observation. One thing that we harness very well is you and me talking to each other. What
Hmm.
most organizations are not unable to harness, what I think is the most important thing, is actually that you and I remember to tell each other when we were good and when we were bad. I'll give you an example from my own life. And we institutionalize that we check in on Fridays, and one of those is a part of that's a part of that is just giving kudos to whoever did something great for the week. And it's a deliberate process where you have to think about, did Dean do something great this week, or did Sam, or did whoever else do something great? And now I'll give you a interesting fact. We were 200 people. We had 14,000 kudos last year.
Hmm.
Trying to think of that. How many businesses actually harness a free resource of thinking for 5 minutes who did a great job? And if you've ever walked around on a Friday in our office, you can see the little smile from somebody reading the check-ins from somebody else writing, Dean, that was awesome, the presentation you gave to the board. I can even make you a little bit smiley now just from me telling you that. And that's a
Yeah.
human
It's not,
thing.
it's a hypothetical thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's building strength in the team. And I think so many leaders, we force everyone to go on meetings and we talk about stuff and all that. We really don't force anyone to think about, how am I impacting the people next to you? And you don't put that into a system. And I think those are the greatest teams, right? Those are the ones, whether it's, again, sports or business or whatever have you, those are the ones who respect each other, who are able to bring each other up. Because what else also happens is that you normalize feedback. You
Hmm.
obviously normalize it with positive feedback, but you know, Dean, that I'm the terrible one. You did a great job at the board presentation, but you have to tell me, hey, Rasmus, that slide 17, that was really ugly. You delivered crap. Step up, dude.
Yeah.
Right? But that in essence, as we're used to telling each other, either you did good. I mean, I know that you told me a couple of weeks ago I did great. You normalize that the feedback can't go both ways. And I think we often have this performance reviews where we then go, oh, this wasn't good, or this wasn't good, and this was good. And it's once a year. It's it that's not harnessing uh, the team energy and putting
Yeah.
that back into the business. And it costs you nothing.
Yeah. That's true. So let's go back for a second. Tell us about what you do now.
Yeah.
What's your job? What's your work? What's your company? What's it all about? Because I think it's going to add some context to this conversation, or we might be able to drill down on some of the items that you guys are doing.
Yeah. So I'm the CEO of a company called Zensai. We uniquely build a human success platform. We chose not to call it a human resource platform. I have a lot of opinions on that that ties to what we've just been speaking about.
Hmm.
It's a learning platform. It's a performance platform. And it's an engagement platform. Have delivered a fantastic growth journey by being really good at actually aligning with Microsoft and sitting within the flow of work. So you won't actually notice what our application does. It basically shows up within Teams and helps you learn stuff, or know what your performance goals are and all those kind of things. So a software company with a very rapid scale, focusing on making teams and organizations better.
It's always been the holy grail of people in learning and development to find a way to measure the outcome of learning,
Mm.
to create an ROI. I'm an HR person, I'm a training person in a company,
Yeah.
and I want to be able to do leadership development. And they go, well, we're having a weak year. We don't have the money for it. We probably intuitively know it's a good thing to do, but we're not doing it, and we won't do it because we can't find it on a spreadsheet somewhere.
Yeah.
How does your platform measure engagement, measure performance, or does it?
Yeah. So there's a lot of, so we put a lot of value into the words human success. We think that if you start by just the convention, human resources,
Hmm.
that means that if I'm your employee, I'm your resource. But if I'm your customer, you will apply customer success to ensure I'm a successful uh, customer of your business, right? So why are we not investing in the success of people? So that's number one, why we try to just stray away from that. And what we've built to underpin that is actually a human success score. It's not really based on where all of the science of L&D and engagement and all of that is coming from. Because if that would have worked, we would have known that number by now. So we
Hmm.
need to find a different way. And we've been at this for 30 years, and the oldest learning platforms and engagement platforms are probably that old. So the
Sure.
way we took inspiration was we went back and looked at what is a thing has that has a form of training, something with showing up, and some results. And it's essentially a Strava or it's a Garmin app. Because try to think of this. If you are actually training for a marathon or a half marathon, it doesn't matter whether you're a fast runner or a slow runner. If you do your training, if you show up, engagement, and if you deliver your goals, the number one thing that you can actually do is you can predict your time. It doesn't matter if you're fast or slow. And in human resources, we've always had this, what is your KPI? It's attrition. You can't do anything about this. But if an organization is learning, it's valuable for the future. If an organization is engaged in what they're doing, they're actually delivering right now. And then if you actually have goals that you're also hitting, you're actually an effective organization. The weird thing is, if you reverse that and say you have an organization or a person who is learning and is performing but not engaged, you very likely have a lever. If you have somebody who is performing and engaged but not learning, they're likely valuable now, but they're really likely not valuable in the future. And get back to AI, then are they learning AI? Are they becoming a valuable resource? And the last thing that we did with this is that we thought
Hmm.
about the boardroom. Because when you come to the boardroom, we thought about every single executive. And we basically went, if the CEO comes and says the business is doing great or bad, there is definitely a repercussion if it's doing bad from the board. If the CFO comes and goes, we were supposed to have 100 million in cash, we only have 52, everyone sits up and goes, what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
If the CTO comes and goes, yeah, we were supposed to operate at 5 nines and have availability that's super superior to everyone else, and he comes and goes, yeah, it was down by 4 days and our customers didn't have service, everyone goes, are you sure you should be on the team? And if the chief revenue officer comes and says, I booked index 130 for this month, everyone goes, yeah, you're the greatest person ever. What does the chief HR officer, or chief human success officer, as we call our own,
Great.
say at that meeting? They will say, what is your number? And they will go, maybe it's attrition,
Right.
but it's a lacking indicator. And you could argue that that's the result of what everyone else is doing. No,
Right.
it was a bad manager. Or Rasmus didn't take care of things.
Right.
So all in all, we want a score that's as
So,
current as your shape in Garmin or Strava, and you basically get it on 100 points score. And if you have over 80 points, you are a human success organization. That means you have enough learning in the organization for the month, high enough engagement, and high enough performance against your goals. So now let me try this with you, Chairman Dean. I
okay.
come as the chief human resource officer, and I will tell you, we've been a human success organization. You know, we've been up there, Dean, for 10 years. We are no longer. We only scored 62. You would go, what happened, Rasmus?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I know as a CEO, if we are a great place to work. We're even greatest place to work in some of our in some of the places we have offices. If I came and told the board, we're no longer a great place to work, so certified by UKG and all of that kind of thing,
Yeah.
they would go, what happened, Rasmus? Are they upset with you? Didn't we pay them enough? Then they would double click. And essentially, that's what happens in a boardroom. They hear one number and they want to double click, because remember, in the boardroom, not everyone understands, and the subject matter that most people think they understand the most but understand the least is often um, the people side of things and how that's measured. Therefore, you need to be able to succinctly say we're doing good or great, or good, great, or terrible, and people need to react.
I like this a lot. So you're three different components of what you would call not human resource, but human success was performance, learning, and engagement.
Yeah,
Were those the three?
yeah,
So I have to double click on those
yeah.
three for a second, just so that I can sort of anticipate what our listeners may be wondering. I kind of almost see this symbiotic relationship between learning and engagement, that one sort of begets the other. You've got them separated out. Say more about that.
Because if you read any boatloads of studies, Gartner, McKinsey, whoever, they will say that 60 to 70% of people are disengaged at work.
But that does
And
that also mean that they're not learning? Or does
that
that mean they can be learning but not engaged?
they can't be learning. They can be taking all of the courses you want them to do, and they can be trying to do, but they can be disengaged for a lot of reasons. One thing would be manager. I'll give you the example, because in the business we run now, perform and engage was things we bought. It was an M&A, it was an acquisition. And as a good CEO, I obviously installed the system and I asked all of my executives, can you be on this system and we'll try to check in and we'll do all the stuff that this platform does. And I get all these scores, and I start to go, I'm getting this weird score of belonging is not really good. And I'm
Hmm.
thinking, this is weird, because otherwise, like any other CEO, the team likes me and it's going well. Um, and then I go, I have to call their customer success department and go, I don't know what's happening here. And the person at the other end tells me, do you actually give feedback on the things that people check in with? And I go, no, no, I write it down on my piece of paper and then I take it, and maybe we discuss that on the Monday meeting. Maybe we don't. And maybe I take it to a one-to-one. And I do read it. I go, no, no, I'm holding you accountable as a manager. And I think that the disengagement often has to do with like the manager relationship and the overall task, not just the learning. And also, you can say when you're starting to not hit your goals, I talk about our own business as I've always not been a super fan of having seven highlights of what we do in this organization. We want to be humble and brave and whatever kind of thing. I try to describe ours as human success, and that's our values. You want to show up as a good human every day. You want to be a good human to everyone around you, and that's the soft side.
Hmm.
Whereas success is actually hitting numbers. It's a hard master, but I don't believe that any team is a great team, and I don't think any team is an engaged team if you don't have the wins. You can have the best team and the best teammates and everything like that. I played soccer on some of those teams when I was a younger kid. I was not a terribly good soccer player, so we lost like 10-0. But we had the best time with friends. But at the end of the season, it was kind of okay. We're going out there again. Was it 6-0 or is it going to be 13-0 or what is it going to be? Right? We were terrible. Great friends, but it would not have made a long-lasting, successful team.
Right.
And I don't think any team in business, if we're nice to each other and all of that, but we're not really winning, you feel it. Then the engagement goes down just from not feeling like we're a winning team.
I totally get that. So you mentioned that engagement is a function of or connected to giving feedback. How else do you define engagement then?
In addition, it's also you should see engagement leaning to both leadership, to your own how am I actually feeling and showing up for the business, and then you should also feel it in terms of, or you should actually relate it to performance, because I think engagement is also, am I engaged in reaching my goals? If you've ever had these salespeople who will be granted I know you sold for $20 last year. This year you're going to have to sell for $100. These unachievable commercial targets. And I think that again, so many of businesses set targets, and I think you demotivate. I mean, the easiest department to discuss this in is sales, because if you get a commission target where half of your salary is based on you have to sell this, and it goes up by a factor 4 from last year, and you go look at it and go, we have no new products, and we have less leads and all those kind of things, you
Hmm.
lose engagement from the team. And it's not a function of whether they're not learning or anything. They just lose it. They just lose the engagement because they can't see themselves be a winning team. And that's back to the mission and overall sense of, are we actually a winning team here? Or are we, and sometimes you have to compensate with team and camaraderie for not meeting the targets. And sometimes the targets, you will hit the targets, but the team is a little bit in disarray. But I think both actually are a better place to be than when you just leave that alone.
So, all right, this is really opening up my eyes a bit. I think you're hitting onto something that's really important. Working with HR teams and so forth, you're absolutely 100% right. They come to the board meetings and they have very little to report back on. You know, it's usually engagement scores that normally happen once a year based on that annual survey, or there might be a pulse survey every other year. So we don't even get real time data. Could be several months old. We get retention, we get recidivism, we get all that stuff, but it's not very compelling, right? It's not like what marketing might do or what my production might do. So, how do you? I think it comes down to the people behave in the area in which they are measured. How do you measure performance, engagement, and learning? And maybe this goes back to your platforms, which is fine. Let's talk about it, because I think that's what people are missing is, how do I tell the story about why this training, why this program, why this
Yeah.
initiative is necessary for you to fund it? Because if we don't have an ROI to it, then why should we put money to it? And so what are the ways that you measure those three things?
First and foremost, at one point in when we get there, I would love to open source the way we do the human success score. I actually think that the vertical or whatever the industry of people professionals could all of the software vendors around us, if they would provide the same thing, I would be mega happy, because I think
Hmm.
we as a craft, we need that, and I would be more happy if that's actually what is happening, and that's what we're looking at. The other thing I would say is, you hit on something that's very close to my heart, because I always ask people, like, if I told you what my shape was last year in November, I'm an avid runner today and all of that, and I could tell you that, um, you would go, Rasmus, but that has no bearing on you today, because it's Thanksgiving and tomorrow, and you'll be 10 kilos heavier or
Yeah.
however many pounds, and then that's not going to have any bearing. Which means, as soon as you start to do this just on a weekly basis, and it becomes such lightweight, and internally, I will tell people, you're not checking in for the engagement. You're actually checking in to remember to give kudos to your colleagues, because that's another part. If there starts to be no kudos, that means your organization is falling apart. They start to be disengaged, and I mean, if I can't tell you something nice because you help me, it's falling apart. But what I really want to get to is that the human success score, because I think that's what people professionals have never been able to prove. But I do think, and there's all these studies that kind of try to show it, but it's impossible to do on a yearly annual score, is that there is a correlation between how people and teams are feeling
Hmm.
and how they perform business wise.
Yes.
Um, but we can, if I only gave you one number a year and then the attrition, which has nothing to do with that, you can't prove that. So what we're actually going to do is that we're going to map your human success score to your revenue. We'll find a way
Hmm.
to get to revenue if you have to input it, even if the HR professionals have to input that themselves every end of month. I am very sure that if you have a dip in human success score to 62 or whatever that was I mentioned before, I am pretty sure that 3 months later, you will see an actual outcome of, you will actually see the business declining or not performing as well as it did. And I think then it becomes interesting. And I think the other piece that becomes interesting and is that we also collect a boatload of like people just commenting on things that they feel work or not work. And then we put some AI algorithms underneath it, which means that I get a little dashboard that says these are the keywords of things that are not working. They are 80% correct on what's not working in the business. Half of them I know, And then there are some where you just can see that there's inertia between marketing and sales, or there's inertia between two other groups of people where you just go, oh, we could solve that. And you can sit people down, and then you can have the meeting online, but everyone can see that this is what's coming in. This is the factual base, and this is what we're trying to achieve and solve for.
So I'm still curious about the mechanics of it now because you got me hooked on the relationship between these three things in human success. So
Yeah.
how does this work then? I mean, what is this platform that you've created? You say it interfaces with Microsoft.
Mm.
Um, what does a client get when they work with you that creates this human success score and eventually, obviously, the other things that follow that?
So think about this: that we've built some algorithms underneath all of this, that calculates the score, and we've tried to tune that over nearly 2 years now. So I think it comes out roughly right. The thing it scores is, hey, are people taking their learning?
Taking
Are
the
they
learning, meaning
taking
going to training
going?
classes or work.
That could be going to classes. It can support online classes. It can support all kinds of learning. Even you can fill in stuff that you've gone to somewhere else, and
However you deem learning, because learning could be on the job, following your manager,
it could be
shadowing, whatever.
it
Okay.
could be every possible thing of that. Some of them are customers are manufacturing companies. They're learning how to produce carbon fiber wheels for a
Right.
bike, stuff like that, right? But we always distinction and then we make the distinction between mandatory learning, which normally everyone pays attention to because there's a compliance thing, and then we pay attention to things where you're learning new skills. So obviously, all of this feeds back into a skills framework, and that basically, in very short ways, defines the score for learning. So are you learning? Are you doing your compliance? But are you also learning frequently? We have some things about success journeys where people are setting those up for getting to new levels, all those kind of things. I keep tracking on those. There are 7 different parameters that we use, but in essence, is learning happening frequently in the organization and not just compliance courses.
Okay. So stop for a second. I want to get to the other two, but I want to ask you more about learning. Compliance, I get. Learning a technical skill. How do you put this widget into this area, whatever. You could test on that to see whether or not that person has been able to retain the information and they can demonstrate it. I get that. What about the stuff that's harder to measure whether or not a person has actually learned something? Say soft skills, say things that are going to require a new mindset over a period of time. Because I
Mm.
often think that some of those soft skills start to trigger people, their history, their childhood, all the other garbage that gets in the way of us being able to learn something. I think that's why the coaching industry, quite frankly, has maintained a pretty steady state for the last 30 some
Mm.
odd years because it's an iterative learning process.
Yeah.
If it were using the same learning process that we do, say, for somebody in a technical skill that they're learning, you would get it once, maybe twice, and your coaching sessions would be done, right? But so what's your thought about those soft skill learning processes? How do you know when a person actually has mastered it versus know it?
Essentially, the soft skill part of it we measure and engage. So the
So
reason
that slips into the engagement bucket.
because the way we think about it is
Okay.
that you can actually you can better measure the soft skills on how people feedback, give you sentiment back in an everyday situation,
Okay.
because you
Hmm.
will I will say this: there is a high correlation between people who get a lot of kudos and those who are really good at a lot of soft skills.
Kudos, soft skills are equal,
Not always, but
but
there's a high
there's
correlation.
a correlation. Okay,
Yeah,
understood.
and you can I mean, we've I have the best example, and one of our demos is almost, she's now VP of product marketing, and she's almost like she's almost also our demo figure, because Anya, who runs product marketing at this point, she's the prototypical person you would never promote, because she was one of those hardworking, come into the office, a little bit introverted, not speaking too much and all of that. Then you look through our engagement and how many people she interacts with and just praises her for the way she deals with problems, the way she deals and solves with things and all of those kind of things. And today she's promoted 3 times. She's the VP. She runs a team of 12 people, I think now, something that tune. Um, and the one thing that has happened is that as you speak to her about why she got promoted, she's now started to be certain of herself in these public situations where she needs to actually represent the team. And I've used her
Mm.
for investor meetings and high stakes demos and all of those kind of things. And she shows up like you would not think that was a person that 3 years ago you would think of as being timid.
Mm.
And I think at that point it's not a manager, it's actually the collective of the team that tells you that person fits with the values we have. She fits with
Mm.
how we want to be. I would love to be led by her. And that's, I think, the biggest accolade that you can give a person. And I think it allows people to step up on a platform of confidence. And I often think that the social skills is a platform of confidence. And I mean, sometimes, unfortunately, your childhood will not be helpful to you, and sometimes it will be helpful, and sometimes things in life will be helpful to you, and sometimes it won't. But I think at the core, the fact that you are able to step on a platform where you feel you're trusted and that you are respected in the eyes of your peers or your managers, that helps a lot for that step up, which is the most difficult one. The one where you step up internally and you have to manage who were your former colleagues.
Sure. You've traveled a lot. You've been to, at one, I think you said hundreds of different countries, and your company
Yeah.
has been all over the place. So we are sort of talking about engagement and learning and performance from a framework that I think you and I could say, yes, we agree on this. But
Yeah.
what about other countries where the framework for engagement or learning might be different, or the social mores may be different than what you and I grew up with? How does this need to adapt, or does it adapt to the local culture that you're working with?
You always have to. I mean, I'm Danish, and we are often direct. We're very often very supportive, and kind of that's not always worked in other in other cultures. I've
So would your
asked
success
people.
factors then change based on the culture in which you're working and measuring?
I
Or do you
no
have
because
a
I
baseline?
I think you have a baseline because I think the showing up and showing up as the best version of yourself every day is common in all cultures.
Okay.
The winning teams actually do that, and I think there's a core element of how you set goals and deliver goals, and I think there's a core element of how you learn. From there on, you
Okay.
have all 100% a leadership challenge, and I remember I've lived 7 years in the Bay Area and sat next to some of my sales team members and all of those types of things. And I started asking them, "How are you doing?" and all of that. And they were like, "But you're the C level. You shouldn't be asking me." They always answered like mega positive because I'm hitting my numbers. I'm on the right path and all of that.
Yeah.
At that point, I'll on my side say I didn't understand the performance culture that Americans grow up with through school and everything. And
Mm.
I've understood that now with my son playing soccer and all of those kind of things. And they were like looking at me and go, what are you doing? And I go like, no, I actually want to help you. I'm here to be a resource at the same level as you because that's how we see ourselves as Danes. And at the end, I'm so thankful for not for the violence and everything else of the TV show Vikings, but I was able to
Mm.
explain them why I asked how you're doing because I always said, where does the chieftain run? Right next to everyone else on the line. So if you don't tell me you're not feeling good, that's my danger as well. And people will go, "Oh, that's what you're doing." And only by showing that you can actually get there. And also similarly in India, when you've done all of the outsourcing and everyone was going, "Yeah, but they can't think for themselves and we have to write everything
Mhm.
down."
Right,
And I
right.
went like, "I can't even complete the recipe that my wife gives me for dinner
Right.
because she's written it down and I have to understand it." And then you're thinking that whatever Danish, Danglish thing that you're writing to them, they can understand and interpret, right? If you when Agile came, you figure out that they can do exactly that. They can build amazing things if they make those decisions in the team. So you obviously have to be socially aware of how you set it up.
Yes.
But I
Yes.
think that's even true within a company that's based in one nation
Well,
because
like the
people
United
go to,
States. Yeah, East
yeah,
Coast is much different than the West Coast, which is much different than
100%.
the
A meeting in New
Midwest.
York versus a meeting in LA, I show up
Totally
different.
different. Yes, exactly. And just the cultural differences about how we behave, how we give feedback, how we accept it, what's considered trust, all those things are slightly different. But you're saying that there is a baseline that is ubiquitous across different cultures.
I surely believe so. And I
Okay.
think
It's interesting.
I've been fortunate enough. I think I've led teams in 14 different countries, from Japan,
Mhm.
Australia, Brazil, you name it. And I do think that at the core, there are some things that we all want to achieve as people. And if you can, I honestly, and it's not to be self-sufficient, but I do think still you can boil that down to human and success.
Yeah.
And if you have those two things, you have a great team.
So, all right. I love the idea of renaming human resources to human success. I love the idea of being able to have ways to measure that in things that directly relate to ROI. I think that's the holy grail of a lot of us in our industry is to
Yeah.
figure that out. If I were listening to this and I'm going, all right, what can I do if I'm a leader of a team? Not yet going out and buying your platform and
Yeah.
let's just say initial next steps, right? What could I do that I may not be doing now relative to performance engagement and learning? That's a simple step, not your common, yes, that makes sense, but something a little bit different that we may not always be paying attention to. Do you have any ideas about three things in those three bucket areas?
Um, Three things.
Yeah.
I look, I would, if you don't want a tool, and that's fair,
If you
start
don't
your
what?
team. If you don't need a tool to start this off.
Right.
I
That's my,
think
yeah. Right.
I think and I don't necessarily think that you need to do that. But if you start every meeting, whether online or anything like that, just cognizant of the two words human and success.
Hmm.
How have we been good humans to each other? And what success did we deliver together?
Hmm.
Just asking those two unlocks either a smile because you did something great, or everyone goes a little bit like, "Ooh, yeah, we didn't do so well." But the one thing that's actually interesting is that you never fail on both, because in the situations where everyone goes, "Ooh, that wasn't so good. We failed on bookings numbers," you will almost always have people who stepped up for each other, tried to help, who tried to help, and you can find success in either of the buckets. And the weird thing is, there's a small smile, whatever is the outcome. Could have actually been a terrible week for the team. Somebody's grandmother could have died, and everyone was whatever, but you were successful in some of the delivering something, or you can have been not successful, but the team stepped up for each other. And I think if you start with that, I think you have a great principle for how to lead the team. And they will also help you find what we started with, the mission and all of that. Because I think then you are asking the team. Very often it becomes the leader who comes and tells you this is the culture and this is how we do. I cannot make 200 people do exactly as I tell them. I
Mhm.
can make them feel like teams, and
Mm.
those teams compound to make the culture that we have. I also always feel like the companies who say we can create a culture, it's created for you, and it's created by who you are and how you show up, but you need a framework to put that energy into.
Yeah. So going back to my first big, hairy, audacious question, is there anything else that you might want to add in terms of AI relative to developing high performance teams, aside from the obvious, like algorithms that we're now using much more to be able to map all these things and connect them and align them? Does AI as an agent, AI agents, AI bots, ChatGPT, all the other different ways in which we're beginning to harness this huge resource, what role does that set of technologies play aside from just simply we can go out and find stuff a lot better? Um,
I
your
I
thoughts on
think
that?
I think for people leaders, it's a massive challenge. We will all in the technology field, we will go through the same leadership challenges that you had in the Industrial Revolution, where people on the floor were a lot and they became fewer and fewer as there were conveyor belts and machines that did all the stuff that they used to do by hand. And I think that even amplifies the need for why do we have a team that now manages a boatload of bots and work streams? And how do we make humans better from AI and not have the conversation of how does AI take over the world and uh, create Terminator-like situations and Cyberdyne will take over the world and all of those kind of things. And I think for people leaders and managers and middle managers and everyone, that ability to explain that um, in conjunction with how your team is feeling, because I do think that the team feel becomes even more important. And the day you stand with just bots that are doing your entire work, I always make the example that I don't think that when you have a sales bot that's selling to a procurement bot, they will never get to an outcome because they will be equally good. And my check bag is that I used to be a decent chess player, and you never play Big Blue against each other itself because it will
Hmm.
end in a draw 999 times out of 1,000.
Hmm.
And there, I think you need the smarts of the people to find compromise, and you need exactly where we started, right? How does people create great teams also across organizations? Because we're still organizations that need to buy from each other, that need to help each other. I don't think the bots are going to help us on that. We're going
Yeah.
to have to live with that as humans, and then we're going to optimize the way we work underneath. And that's going to be a completely different scenario. And that's why I would love that people are called human success and the
Yeah.
things can be resources, because then there is a distinction of what we contribute to the equation. That's not just I'm a resource, you're a resource, and
Right.
here's a new AI resource, and he can replace both of you with
Right.
uh, more
Yeah.
speed and no salary and all those kind of things.
Yeah. The resource word really kind of becomes very transactional,
It does.
much like AI can be seen as transactional. But if you really focus on human and success, it kind of gets us back to thinking about, well, then how do we define humanity? How do we define human
Yeah.
behaviors relative to AI behaviors? We've never had to do that before. My parents, my grandparents, your great grandparents never had to well, what does it mean to be human? Because we had nothing to push against that would challenge
Yeah.
that, you know, maybe in small ways, but it's happening so fast that I think we're having to reclaim or redefine what humanity is in an age of AI.
Yeah,
It's
I do.
fascinating. So, really good stuff. I'm really fascinated by this because I have just been been at this for 3 decades or so. That it comes back down to this. You're making a difference somehow. You kind of have an
Yeah.
intuitive sense. Organizations do when they bring in coaches or trainers and they're trying to get better performance. But this idea that we don't know really how to measure it and we really don't have a seat at the table because our measurement isn't as compelling as sales or whatever else there may be. So then how could we possibly then have the kind of leverage we need in order to create human success
Mm.
if we don't have a measurement process in order to do that? So I really think this is great.
I mean, it's a hard push. And when we came up
It
with
is.
this, we were like, oh man, this is going to take a long time and we're going to have to push. We're going to be told we're wrong and we're going to be told all kinds of things. I still think that the fact that I could walk up to you and tell you that out of 100, my sleep score last night was 92, and you would
Yeah.
have a sense without knowing me whether I
Just by
slept
going
good
on
or
your
bad.
watch, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
And even
Garmin.
more, think about this, even more crazy because I've started to talk to, we talk to a lot of venture capital firms and private equity firms, and I always ask them, so how do you measure what the team is like?
Hmm.
And they go, but I talk to you and I talk to the executive team throughout the process and stuff like that. I go, that's not the team. Do you read
Hmm.
Glassdoor? Yeah, we read Glassdoor. And I go, that's two ends of the spectrum. That's either the very
Right.
disgruntled or it's the very positive ones that have gone there. So you have nothing of the middle.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
sometimes they do like call out interviews with former or existing employees. And then at the end, I always ask them, so if you had the choice, and don't tell me you can change the team or you could fund it. If you had the choice and you had to invest in two companies, one has a excellent team, but a mediocre product, and the other has an amazing product and a mediocre team, which one would you pick? And they always
Mhm.
try to squirmish out of it, but they mostly come back to the company with the best team. And I go, and that you can't measure. Everything else you will go through to the end of the world to go through my spreadsheet to see whether on the Australian sales map, we've converted 2% less of MQLs than we did in North America. That you will check, but you will not check what is actually most important to you. And I think even that industry needs to think about it. If you had 10 companies they could invest in that looks like mine and does learning and performance and that kind of thing, and you could go in and ask them, can you just all give me your human success score? And mine would be 97 and the rest would be 52. You would probably invest in me, but we can't prove
Correct.
that.
Yeah. So what I think also that I've noticed is that organizations sometimes are afraid to ask their teams how it's going because they don't want to know
Yeah.
the answer. They're afraid to find out. They're afraid to realize that things aren't as rosy as they thought, or it might require an investment of time and energy to be able to repair these broken areas. So might as well not ask. I've even seen one organization that we've worked with in the past. They said, "Well, let's not do the annual review. Your old style annual review, annual survey, employee engagement survey." And I think it's because they were afraid to find out what the answers would be. But I
Yeah.
think if you tie into this human success score notion that it does have an ROI component, it does make you more successful as an organization, then maybe we're willing to go through some of the hard work that it's needed to bridge the gap and to be able to build these teams because we do see that it's going to amount to something. But if we
Yeah.
don't see it's going to amount to something, then why would, then, if we're lazy, we may not even ask these questions of our teams.
No, but think about it. I mean, I'm sure that Brock Purdy went back after he what was it, 4 interceptions he threw over on Monday Night Football, right?
Yeah,
He goes back with his coaches and watches that film a million times and goes,
totally.
"I should have seen that. I should have done this." They react to that. They're not afraid. I mean, that's an extreme high performance environment.
Right.
And film study is every week. It's every play. They know what they did wrong. And
Yep.
when we say as business leaders, "Oh, we're afraid to find out because we do it once every year." If Brock
Maybe.
Purdy had to sit and look at all of his mistakes for a whole year,
Yeah.
he would think he's the most terrible player on earth
Right.
because he would see mistake after mistake after mistake. But now he watches a terrible game and he had a passer rating of 130 the week before. So
Yeah.
like, then that's the feedback level, and that's why it's important it has cadence, and that's what I'm saying, then it also becomes a safe space to give positive,
Yeah.
where the little smile comes up, passer rating of 130, Brock, way to go. 4 interceptions, dude, you were lucky we won that game, right? So so I think it's also just embracing that and normalizing it, because the more long I mean, if you don't go to the dentist for 10 years, it's also gonna look pretty scary when you get there.
Hmm.
Uh it doesn't help to postpone it. It doesn't help to. I don't want to hear how my teeth now look. Uh,
Yeah.
if you take it in all other aspects of life, you would go. That's not what we would want to do.
Right.
If you have an argument with your wife, you don't want to wait a year until you figure out why we had that, right?
Exactly. So I think that if
So
there's so many different nuggets in this, but I think the one that really sticks out for me is this consistent, constant feedback, postmortems, reviewing what happened. How do we build it into the next, learning opportunity? This that constant loop. I really think that that's one of the big things I get out of this conversation.
and actually, weirdly, note what we just did. I could see you know football.
A
So
little
when I
bit.
said a passer rating of 130, you just went, "That's good."
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we in one number could define how a quarterback for an arbitrary team that we hadn't planned ahead of time
Right.
played in a single game.
Right.
And this is what we want to end up with. That if you, as an HR professional or human success professional in the future, and we speak to each other, we can go, my passer rating, my human success score is 92, yours is 97. How
Mhm.
did you get into that?
Right. Right.
Now we're curious.
We have a
Now we're
common
trying to
language.
understand. Hmm?
Yes.
Common
We have a
language.
common language. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Rasmus, this is really an important topic, and I'm glad we connected. And so maybe just finish up. How can people follow you? What you're all about? What's the best place to connect with you?
LinkedIn, Rasmus Holst on LinkedIn. That's the best place to follow. And
Company website. I'm giving you some softballs here, buddy.
Zensai.com, but people make fun of the fact that we post so much on LinkedIn that you might as well just, I mean, that's the journal of the company. It goes faster than the website. So Zensai.com if you want that.
Sounds good. Thank you for your time. This has been great.
Dean, this was excellent. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to Leadervation with Dean Newland. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com, or check the show notes. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. Transform your leadership success with Leadervation.